Hi everybody. Happy Thursday to you. So today we will be completing the rest of chapter 10, which was titled The Rogue Bludger, and we definitely found out how this chapter got its name from what happened in the first half of the chapter yesterday when Harry was in a Quidditch match against Slytherin. It's Malfoy's first time as seeker for the Slytherin Quidditch team, and they are not being very nice or fair. And in the meantime, there is a bludger that just has it out for Harry. Doesn't matter what's going on in the game or how many times Fred and George hit it out of the way, it just keeps coming back for him. And so right when we were leaving off yesterday, because he had seen the golden snitch by Malfoy and didn't want to let on that it was there, he stayed put for just a moment too long and the bludger actually crashed into him, and I think his arm is broken. But something else happened that was exciting. Through a haze of rain and pain, he dived for the shimmering, sneering face below him and saw its eyes widen with fear. Malfoy thought Harry was attacking him. "What the?" he gasped, careening out of Harry's way. Harry took his remaining hand off the broom and made a wild snatch. He felt his fingers close on the cold snitch, but was now only gripping the broom with his legs, and there was a yell from the crowd below as he headed straight for the ground, trying hard not to pass out. With a splattering thud, he hit the mud and rolled off his broom. His arm was hanging at a very strange angle, riddled with pain. He heard, as though from a distance, a good deal of whistling and shouting. He focused on the snitch, clutched in his good hand. "Aha," he said vaguely. "We've won." And he fainted. He came around, rain falling on his face, still lying on the field, with someone leaning over him. He saw a glitter of teeth. And so this is the first part of the second half of the chapter. I meant to pause and mention that. "Oh no, not you," he moaned. "Doesn't know what he's saying," said Lockhart loudly to the anxious crowd of Gryffindors pressing around them. "Not to worry, Harry. I'm about to fix your arm." "No," said Harry. "I'll keep it like this, thanks." He tried to sit up, but the pain was terrible. He heard a familiar clicking noise nearby. "I don't want a photo of this, Colin," he said loudly. "Lie back, Harry," said Lockhart soothingly. "It's a simple charm I've used countless times." "Why can't I just go to the hospital wing?" said Harry through clenched teeth. "He really should, Professor," said a muddy Wood, who couldn't help grinning even though his seeker was injured. "Great capture, Harry. Really spectacular. Your best yet, I'd say." Through the thicket of legs around him, Harry spotted Fred and George Weasley, wrestling the rogue bludger into a box. It was still putting up a terrific fight. "Stand back," said Lockhart, who was rolling up his jade-green sleeves. "No, don't," said Harry weakly, but Lockhart was twirling his hand, and a second later he had directed it straight at Harry's arm. A strange and unpleasant sensation started at Harry's shoulder and spread all the way down to his fingertips. It felt as though his arm was being deflated. He didn't dare look at what was happening. He had shut his eyes, his face turned away from his arm, but his worst fears were realized as the people above him gasped and Colin Creevey began clicking away madly. His arm didn't hurt anymore, nor did it feel remotely like an arm. "Ah," said Lockhart. "Yes, well, that can sometimes happen, but the point is, the bones are no longer broken. That's the thing to keep in mind. So, Harry, just toddle up to the hospital wing. Mr. Weasley, Miss Granger, would you escort him? And Madame Pomfrey will be able to, tidy you up a bit." As Harry got to his feet, he felt strangely lopsided. Taking a deep breath, he looked down at his right side. And what he saw nearly made him pass out again. Poking out of the end of his robes was what looked like a thick, flesh-colored rubber glove. He tried to move his fingers, but nothing happened. Lockhart hadn't mended Harry's bones. He had removed them. Madame Pomfrey was not pleased at all. "You should have come straight to me," she raged, holding up the sad, limp remainder of what, a half hour earlier, had been a working arm. "I can mend bones in a second, but growing them back—" "You'll be able to, won't you?" said Harry desperately. "I'll be able to, certainly, but it will be painful," said Madame Pomfrey grimly, throwing Harry a pair of pajamas. "You'll have to stay the night." Hermione waited outside the curtain drawn around Harry's bed while Ron helped him into his pajamas. It took a while to stuff the rubbery, boneless arm into his sleeve. "How can you stick up for Lockhart now, Hermione? Ron called through the curtains as he pulled Harry's limp fingers through the cuff. "If Harry had wanted deboning, he would have asked." Anyone can make a mistake," said Hermione. "And it doesn't hurt anymore, does it, Harry?" "No," said Harry, getting into bed, "but it doesn't do anything else either." As he swung himself onto the bed, his arm flapped pointlessly. Hermione and Madame Pomfrey came around the curtain. Madame Pomfrey was holding a large bottle of something labeled Skelegro. "You're in for a rough night," she said, pouring out a steaming beakerful and handing it to him. "Regrowing bones is a nasty business." So was taking the Skelegro. It burned Harry's mouth and throat as it went down, making him cough and splutter. Still tut-tutting about dangerous sports and inept teachers, Madame Pomfrey retreated, leaving Ron and Hermione to help Harry gulp down some more water. "We won, though," said Ron, a grin breaking across his face. "That was some catch you made. Malfoy's face, he looked ready to kill." "I want to know how he fixed that bludger," said Hermione darkly. "Well, we can add that to the list of questions we'll ask him when we've taken the polyjuice potion," said Harry, sinking back onto his pillows. "I hope it tastes better than this stuff." "If it's got bits of Slytherin in it, you got to be joking," said Ron. The door of the hospital wing burst open at the moment. Filthy and soaking wet, the rest of the Gryffindor team had arrived to see Harry. "Unbelievable flying, Harry," said George. "I've just seen Marcus Flint yelling at Malfoy. Something about having the snitch on top of his head and not noticing. Malfoy didn't seem too happy." They had brought cakes, sweets, and bottles of pumpkin juice. They gathered round Harry's bed and were just getting started on what promised to be a good party when Madame Pomfrey came storming over and shouted, "This boy needs rest. He's got 33 bones to regrow. Out! Out!" And Harry was left alone, with nothing to distract him from the stabbing pains in his limp arm. Hours and hours later, Harry woke quite suddenly in the pitch blackness and gave a small yelp of pain. His arm now felt full of large splinters. For a second, he thought that was what had woken him. Then, with a thrill of horror, he realized that someone was sponging his forehead in the dark. "Get off!" he said loudly, and then, "Dobby?" The house elf's goggling tennis ball eyes were peering at Harry through the darkness. A single tear was running down his long pointed nose. "Harry Potter came back to school," he whispered miserably. "Dobby warned and warned Harry Potter. Ah, sir, why didn't you heed Dobby? Why didn't Harry Potter go back home when he missed the train?" Harry heaved himself up on his pillows and pushed Dobby's sponge away. "What are you doing here?" he said. "And how did you know I missed the train?" Dobby's lip trembled, and Harry was seized by a sudden suspicion. "It was you," he said slowly. "You stopped the barrier from letting us through." "Indeed, yes, sir," said Dobby, nodding his head vigorously, ears flapping. "Dobby hid and watched for Harry Potter and sealed the gateway, and Dobby had to iron his hands afterward." He showed Harry 10 long bandaged fingers. "But Dobby didn't care, sir, for he thought Harry Potter was safe, and never did Dobby dream that Harry Potter would get to school another way." He was rocking backward and forward, shaking his ugly head. "Dobby was so shocked when he heard Harry Potter was back at Hogwarts. He let his master's dinner burn. Such a flogging Dobby never had, sir." Harry slumped back onto his pillows. "Well, you nearly got Ron and me expelled," he said fiercely. "You better get lost before my bones come back, Dobby, or I might strangle you." Dobby smiled weakly. "Dobby's used to death threats, sir. Dobby gets them 5 times a day at home." He blew his nose on a corner of a filthy pillowcase he wore, looking so pathetic that Harry felt his anger ebb away in spite of himself. "Why do you wear that thing, Dobby?" he asked curiously. "This, sir?" said Dobby, plucking at the pillowcase. "'Tis a mark of the house elf's enslavement, sir. Dobby can only be freed if his masters present him with clothes, sir. The family is careful not to pass Dobby even a sock, sir, for then he would be free to leave their house forever." Dobby mopped his bulging eyes and said suddenly, Harry Potter must go home. Dobby thought his bludger would be enough to make... Your bludger? Said Harry, anger rising once more. What do you mean, your bludger? You made that bludger try and kill me? Oh, not kill you, sir. Never kill you, said Dobby, shocked. Dobby wants to save Harry Potter's life. Better sent home grievously injured than just remain here, sir. Dobby only wanted Harry Potter hurt enough to be sent home. Oh, is that all? Said Harry angrily. I don't suppose you're going to tell me why you wanted me sent home in pieces? If Harry Potter only knew, Dobby groaned, more tears dripping onto his ragged pillowcase. If he knew what he means to us, to the lowly, the enslaved, we dregs of the magical world. Dobby remembers how it was when he who must not be named was at the height of his powers, sir. We house elves were treated like vermin, sir. Of course, Dobby is still treated like that, sir, he admitted, drying his face on the pillowcase. But mostly, sir, life has improved for my kind since you triumphed over he who must not be named. Harry Potter survived, and the Dark Lord's power was broken, and it was a new dawn, sir, and Harry Potter shone like a beacon of hope for those of us who thought the dark days would never end, sir. And now at Hogwarts, terrible things are to happen, are perhaps happening already, and Dobby cannot let Harry Potter stay here now that history is to repeat itself, now that the Chamber of Secrets is opened once more. Dobby froze, horror-struck, then grabbed Harry's water jug from his bedside table and cracked it over his own head, toppling out of sight. A second later, he crawled back onto the bed, cross-eyed, muttering, "Bad Dobby. Very bad Dobby." "So there is a Chamber of Secrets," Harry whispered. "And did you say it's been opened before? Tell me, Dobby." He seized the Elfbone's wrist as Dobby's hand inched toward the water jug. "But I'm not Muggle-born. How can I be in danger from the chamber?" "Ah, sir, ask no more of poor Dobby," stammered the elf, his eyes huge in the dark. "Dark deeds are planned in this place, but Harry Potter must not be here when they happen. Go home, Harry Potter, go home. Harry Potter must not meddle in this, sir. 'Tis too dangerous." "Who is it, Dobby?" Harry said, keeping a firm hold on Dobby's wrist to stop him from hitting himself with the water jug again. "Who opened it? And who opened it last time?" "Dobby can't, sir. Dobby can't. Dobby mustn't tell," squealed the elf. "Go home, Harry Potter. Go home." "I'm not going anywhere," said Harry fiercely. "One of my best friends is Muggle-born. She'll be first in line if the chamber really has been opened." "Harry Potter risks his own life for his friends," moaned Dobby in a kind of miserable ecstasy. "So noble, so valiant. But he must save himself. He must. Harry Potter must not." Dobby suddenly froze, his bat ears quivering. Harry heard it too. There were footsteps coming down the passageway outside. "Dobby must go," breathed the elf, terrified. There was a loud crack, and Harry's fist was suddenly clenched on thin air. He slumped back into bed, his eyes on the dark doorway to the hospital wing, as the footsteps drew nearer. Next moment, Dumbledore was backing into the dormitory wearing a long woolly dressing gown and a nightcap. He was carrying one end of what looked like a statue. Professor McGonagall appeared a second later carrying its feet. Together, they heaved it onto a bed. "Get Madame Pomfrey," whispered Dumbledore, and Professor McGonagall hurried past the end of Harry's bed out of sight. Harry lay quite still, pretending to be asleep. He heard urgent voices, and then Professor McGonagall swept back into view, closely followed by Madame Pomfrey, who was pulling a cardigan on over her nightdress. He heard a sharp intake of breath. "What happened?" Madame Pomfrey whispered to Dumbledore, bending over the statue on the bed. "Another attack," said Dumbledore. "Minerva found him on the stairs." "There was a bunch of grapes next to him," said Professor McGonagall. "We think he was trying to sneak up here to visit Potter." Harry's stomach gave a horrible lurch. Slowly and carefully he raised himself a few inches so he could look at the statue on the bed. A ray of moonlight lay across its staring face. It was Colin Creevey. His eyes were wide and his hands were stuck up in front of him, holding his camera. Petrified, whispered Madame Pomfrey. Yes, said Professor McGonagall. But I shudder to think, if Albus hadn't been on the way downstairs for hot chocolate, who knows what might have. The three of them stared down at Colin. Then Dumbledore leaned forward and wrenched the camera out of Colin's rigid grip. You don't think he managed to get a picture of his attacker? Said Professor McGonagall eagerly. Dumbledore didn't answer. He opened the back of the camera. Good gracious, said Madame Pomfrey. A jet of steam had hissed out of the camera. Harry, 3 beds away, caught the acrid smell of burnt plastic. Melted, said Madame Pomfrey wonderingly. All melted. What does this mean, Albus? Professor McGonagall asked urgently. It means, said Dumbledore, that the Chamber of Secrets is indeed open again. Madame Pomfrey clapped a hand to her mouth. Professor McGonagall stared at Dumbledore. But Albus, surely, who? The question is not who, said Dumbledore, his eyes on Colin. The question is how. And from what Harry could see of Professor McGonagall's shadowy face, she didn't understand this any better than he did. So that ends chapter 10 in quite a crazy way. Dobby makes a reappearance. Now there is a petrified student. So things are definitely getting interesting and a little bit scary at Hogwarts for the time being. So chapter 11 is titled The Dueling Club. I know that before in The Sorcerer's Stone, when Malfoy challenged Harry to a wizard's duel, it never really happened, but they were going to duel using their wands, and so I don't know if there is a club of people who starts or if there's another meaning with the Dueling Club, but we're going to find out when we read it tomorrow, which I can't wait for. All right. So, in the meantime, have the most thrilling and terrific Thursday, and I shall see you all on Friday. Take care. Bye.